It was Easter Sunday, and I had decided to spend it alone at the old farmhouse I had inherited. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a decaying house tucked away in the middle of the countryside, far from the hustle of the city. My family had owned it for generations, but I hadn't spent much time here. After a rough couple of months, I figured it was the perfect place to get some peace, even if it did feel isolated. The farmhouse had always felt haunted in a way, not by ghosts, but by the weight of time, creaky floorboards, peeling wallpaper, and the ever-present scent of dust and mildew. Still, it was quiet. Too quiet, maybe. And on a day like this, with the fog rolling in from the fields, it felt like the world was holding its breath. I woke up late, groggy from a restless night. The sun barely pierced through the thick fog that had settled over the land. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, staring out at the rolling fields. I was looking for something to do, maybe something to get my mind off the past few months, but the more I sat there, the more the silence seemed to press in on me. Around noon, I turned on the TV. It was Easter after all, and I figured I should catch up on some news. Breaking news: convicted killer escapes prison. The words startled me as they flashed across the screen. I had barely started to pay attention when the news anchor's voice became more urgent.
A dangerous inmate, Jason Calloway, escaped from a high-security prison early this morning. Calloway, a convicted murderer responsible for the brutal killings of 3 women, is considered extremely dangerous. Authorities are asking residents to stay inside and lock their doors. This man is known to be violent, and they fear he may be headed toward the rural areas.
I froze. The name Jason Calloway was familiar to me. I'd seen his face on TV years ago during his trial. The details of his crimes had been all over the news. Gruesome murders, each victim left in a way that sent shivers down your spine. He was sentenced to life in prison, but now he was free, and the idea of him being out there made my stomach churn. The farmhouse was isolated, miles from the nearest neighbor, miles from the nearest police station. I felt my heart start to race. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease and went about my day, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. By late afternoon, the fog had only gotten thicker, blanketing the fields in a thick white shroud. I felt like I was living in some kind of dream, a world where everything was muted and nothing was quite as it seemed. I decided to take a walk to clear my head. Maybe the fresh air would help. The land around the farmhouse stretched on for miles, fields of tall grass, the occasional tree standing like a sentinel. It was all so quiet, so still. The kind of quiet that makes you hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. I walked for a while, my boots crunching on the soft earth. But with each step, the uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach only grew stronger. There was something out there. I couldn't shake the sensation that I wasn't alone. The wind had started to pick up, sending gusts of cold air through the trees. And just as I was about to turn back to the house, I saw it. A shadow at the edge of the field, standing completely still. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the fog, but then the figure moved. It was tall, wearing dark clothes, and its presence felt like a weight on my chest. My breath caught in my throat as I took a step back. The figure didn't move at all, just stood there, watching me. I quickly turned and began walking briskly back toward the house, my heart hammering in my chest. My mind raced. Could it be Calloway? Was he out there? The thought seemed ridiculous, but the longer I walked, the more I could feel that figure in the back of my mind, its presence looming like a shadow. By the time I made it back to the farmhouse, I was shaking, my breath coming in quick bursts. I locked the door behind me and bolted all the windows, my mind racing. I told myself it was nothing, just my nerves. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. As night fell, the farmhouse seemed to grow colder, the silence more oppressive. I tried to focus on something, anything to distract myself, but the weight of the day's events sat heavily on me. I kept thinking about the figure I'd seen, about Jason Calloway. Was he close? Was he watching me? Around 9 p.m., just as I was sitting down to dinner, I heard it. A knock. It was soft, almost imperceptible, but it was there. I froze, the fork halfway to my mouth. The farmhouse was completely isolated. No one ever came out this far. Not unless there was a reason. I stood, slowly moving toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I pressed my ear to the door, straining to hear any sound from the other side. There was nothing, no footsteps, no voices, just the cold wind outside. Then it came again. A tap. Louder this time. More insistent. I stumbled back, panic rising in my throat. I wasn't alone. I knew that now. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, my hands trembling as I held the device to my ear. The operator's voice was calm, too calm for what I was feeling. She asked for my location and the details. I told her about the knock, about the escapee. She told me officers would be dispatched, but it would take at least an hour to get to me. I didn't have an hour. I hung up and rushed to the kitchen, grabbing the nearest heavy object, a cast iron skillet, and clutching it in my shaking hands. Then I heard it. The door handle rattling. Someone was trying to get in. My mind raced. I glanced around the house, looking for any way out. The back door was closer to the barn, but there was no way I'd make it across the field without being seen. My best bet was to stay hidden, wait for the police to arrive. I moved quickly to the basement door and locked myself in, the old wooden stairs creaking under my weight. The basement smelled musty, the darkness swallowing me as I moved to the far corner behind some old crates. I sat there in the dark, the only sound my breath fast and shallow, my heart pounding in my ears. I heard the footsteps above me, slow, deliberate. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. They were savoring the moment, enjoying the fear they were causing. Then, suddenly, I heard a voice.
I know you're in there. You can't hide from me.
It was low and guttural, sending a jolt of terror through my body. I recognized it immediately. Jason Calloway's voice.
Come out to play, you little coward.
I pressed myself further into the corner, doing my best to stay as quiet as possible. My pulse was deafening. I could hear him moving through the house, taking his time, methodical, like a predator hunting its prey. I could almost feel him getting closer. I didn't know how much longer I could stay hidden. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity. Just as I thought I might be found, I heard the sound of sirens in the distance. Then a loud crash. The front door splintered. The police. They were here. The footsteps stopped. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the sound of someone running out the back door. I couldn't believe it. He was gone. As the officers filed into the basement, their flashlights cutting through the dark, I tried to explain everything that had happened, my words coming out in quick, shaky bursts. They searched the house, the barn, the surrounding fields, but there was no sign of Jason Calloway. They found his footprints, but they faded, leading into the thick fog that swallowed up the land. My heart sank as they told me there was no trace of him, no indication of where he had gone. He's probably hiding somewhere, one of the officers said, his voice tense. But we'll get him. Don't worry, we have enough units out here to track him down. But I wasn't convinced. His voice, the cold, taunting words, still echoed in my head. I know you're in there. I couldn't shake the feeling that Calloway was still nearby, watching, waiting. The officers reassured me that they'd keep a close watch on the area, but their words felt empty, like they were just trying to calm me down. How could I feel safe? How could I trust that he was really gone? The patrol cars left after a while, their sirens fading into the fog. The farmhouse felt suffocating once more, and the silence returned, heavier than ever. The cold crept in, even though the heater was running. I locked the doors and checked the windows again. Even though I knew it wouldn't make a difference, it didn't matter. Calloway had been so close. As I stood there, alone in the dark, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Had they really caught him? Or was he still out there, watching me? I tried to push the thought out of my mind, but it stuck with me like a shadow I couldn't escape. I glanced out the window into the foggy field, my thoughts racing. Then one night, a few days later, I found myself standing by the window again. staring out into the dark. The fog had returned, thicker than ever, smothering the world in its gray blanket. I scanned the yard, trying to see through the mist, and that's when I saw him. He was watching me. And this time, I wasn't sure anyone would be coming to help.